America's two great pastimes collide on this podcast. It is baseball and making money from the dog days of summer through the October Classic. Greg Bases Peterson's going to be free swinging at the betting board as he tries to hit a grand slam for your bankroll. Now here is GP.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Monday right here on MLB Overtime Betting. Greg Peterson broadcasting from the Gill Studios out here in beautiful Las Vegas. We've got another terrific show for you as Gill Alexander of the Vegas Stats and Information Network going to be joining me in the second segment to talk a little bit about how he bets baseball early on in the season, just get some of his thoughts on some of the teams' win totals, how some teams are ascending, declining, the sorts of metrics that he looks at. That's going to be a lot of fun. In the final segment, I'm going to give you a side and total on every game on the betting board as we touch them all. But first, I had this question posed to me. This was not a Twitter question, actually, but this is just something I thought was curious. The Angels and the Mariners saw a flip of favorites as the Mariners opened up the favorite at a lot of shops. Then it went to the Angels being the favorite. And sometimes the run line does change at some books, and sometimes it does not. Typically, it depends on the opening number. So I wanted to clarify that typically the run line, whatever you get the team that's laying a run and a half, it's a team that opens up as a favorite, and the team that's getting a run and a half is a team that opens up an underdog. Some shops, they'll move it around as the line moves. Let's say the Seattle Mariners open up the favorite, they would be laying the run and a half to start out with. Sometimes if it flips to the Mariners being an underdog, the run line will flip to them getting a run and a half. Sometimes they'll remain that minus 1.5. So it's one of those things where it varies from book to book. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of intel on that. And as always, because this is a newer podcast, please do tweet it in at Junin_81. Love being able to answer your Twitter questions. And now we've got to get into what all happened yesterday.
What happened yesterday? Let's go around the bases and find out.
Trevor Williams remains a pitcher that you've got to bet on. The Pittsburgh Pirates were able to blank the Cincinnati Reds 5-0. In this game, Trevor Williams was able to pitch 6 strong innings. He had 6 strikeouts. He gave up 3 hits. He was terrific towards the end of last year. I think that after the All-Star break, he had an ERA below 2. He's a guy that I'm really looking to bet on. A team that I'm really looking to bet on as well is actually the New York Mets. I know that they weren't able to get the job done against the Nationals. They lose this game 6-5. Zach Wheeler gives up 4 runs in 5 innings, but it does appear as though the offense has really come to light as the Robinson Cano signing has already paid off for them. He was able to have 2 hits in this game. You were able to see Ramos be able to step up with a nice RBI hit in this one as well. I do like what they're doing there. And then with the Washington Nationals, Patrick Corbin had a pretty good outing in his first game. 6 innings, 2 runs, 4 Ks. He is their big acquisition in the offseason, and I do think that he's going to be a guy that pays off dividends. But a team that's really smoking out right now, how about the Milwaukee Brewers? They knock off the St. Louis Cardinals 5-4 coming back in the 9th inning. In this one, giving up the save was Jordan Hicks, a guy that was not necessarily the most reliable out there in the bullpen last year for the St. Louis Cardinals. He throws a lot of gas, but he has no movement whatsoever. And Christian Yelich has a home run for the 4th straight game in this one. He was able to give the team 3 RBIs. He has been monstrous for this team, and he had the game-winning double in this one as well. You've got Lorenzo Cain being able to rake, so the Brewers right now on a come-up. Another notable result was the Phillies once again pounding the tar out of the Atlanta Braves. They won all these games by multiple runs in this series. Phillies won that one on ESPN by a count of 5-1. In this game, Bryce Harper was able to give this team 2 hits, including a double. Andrew McCutchen went deep, so did Harper. So both those guys were able to do a great job. And this was with the Phillies going 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position. Jake Arrieta was fantastic. 6 innings, 1 run. He had 6 walks, but he also had 6 Ks. He was able to get it done there. The high-scoring slugfest of the day took place in Arlington. It looks like Texas is going to have the most overs in their ballpark once again this year, as the Cubs wound up falling to the Rangers in this one 11-10. Cole Hamels gives up 5 runs in 5 innings in this one. Tyler Chatwood continues to be a garbage pitcher. He's currently out there in the bullpen, and he gave up 3 runs. My voice cracked a little bit there, and it's probably very fitting because Tyler Chatwood is awful. Then for the Rangers, Lance Lynn, he was a human dumpster fire as he gave up 7 runs in this game. But you know what? They did have some better pitching, I guess you could say, out of the bullpen. as being able to get the win in this one was Jose Leclerc. He's actually a very good reliever for this team, but man, it's hard to put your chips in the middle of either of these two teams' bullpen, and that could be a bugaboo for the Cubs moving forward. The A's were able to get a win over the Angels by a count of 2-1. It seems like Oakland just plays a lot of unders, as well as Petco Park. The San Diego Padres were able to get a win over the Giants by a count of 3-1. The much-awaited debut of Chris Paddock was very good, as he was able to go 5 strong innings for this team. He had 7 strikeouts, gave up 1 run, had just 1 walk. And then the bullpen of the San Diego Padres continues to be sensational. They pitched 4 innings of shutout ball. Jeff Samardzija actually looked good in this game. He did not give up a single earned run. He had 1 unearned run in 5 innings. He had only 2 strikeouts and had 4 walks, but he appears to be on his way back up. He was a very good pitcher back in the day, and things just didn't go his way in recent years, so hopefully he's going to be able to get a little bit of a career rebirth. Something that does not need a rebirth is the Boston Red Sox offense. They were able to score 8 runs against the Seattle Mariners, but it was not enough, as Rick Porcello only went 2.2 innings. He gave up 9 runs, but only 4 of them were earned, as a J.D. Martinez error was really the difference in this one. The Seattle Mariners were able to make him pay for it, as in the 3rd inning they had a 7-run third. Just really killed the Boston Red Sox. Babe Ruth was able to go for a home run. That was his 2nd of the year. Seems like he's getting on the right track. And then the 2nd home run of the year was had by Omar Narvaez as well. This is a Seattle Mariners team that is absolutely pounding the ball right now. And so are the LA Dodgers, who were able to knock off the Arizona Cardinals by a count of 8-7. They used a 3-run 8th inning to be able to win. Arizona Diamondbacks put up a 7 spot on Walker Buehler in the 4th as well. So these teams were hitting the ball all over the yard. And you gotta love the fact that we get to use the hashtag pitchers who rake, because Luke Weaver actually had the lone home run for the Arizona Diamondbacks in this one. Meanwhile, Cody Bellinger had his 4th of the year for the LA Dodgers. Dodgers were able to get some good relief pitching to help out Walker Buehler, because all of the Arizona runs came in the 4th inning. Guys like Caleb Ferguson were able to hold down the fort. Alexander was able to come in. He was able to give a quality inning. And then Kenley Jansen had his first save of the season as well. I do like what I saw out of that from the LA Dodgers. And then you've really got to like what you're seeing out of the Minnesota Twins thus far. Granted, this was against a banged-up Cleveland Indians bunch, but Carlos Carrasco got just knocked around by the Minnesota Twins, as they were able to put up a 9 spot and won the game by a count of 9-3. Nelson Cruz had his first home run as a Minnesota Twin. He also added in there a double. He wound up with 2 RBIs in this game. Jonathan Scope drove in a run along with Byron Buxton, who had 2 RBI himself. And for the Cleveland Indians, things just haven't really gone right for them to begin the year. Carrasco, by the way, gave up 10 hits, 6 runs in 4.1 innings, just not going to do the job. And Shane Bieber was actually coming on in relief for this team. I don't know why he's not right now in the starting lineup. I know he doesn't have great stuff, but does a good job of being able to effectively get guys out. And then you have the Tampa Bay Rays being able to take 3 of 4 from the Houston Astros. They won the 4th game of this series by a count of 3-1, and Yoni Chirinos was able to give this team a very good start. Chirinos, 7 innings, 1 earned run, just 2 hits, 6 strikeouts. He was sensational. And then from there, the Rays bullpen was able to shut the door. The Houston Astros just weren't able to get going in this series. They weren't able to generate a lot of offense, as Jake Marisnick had 2 of the team's 3 hits in this one. Meanwhile, for the Tampa Bay Rays, the guy that's really hitting for them is Austin Meadows. He was able to give this team a home run, as they actually put him in the spot on this game. G-Man Choi has also been giving them some production, but he had the day off in this one. This is a Tampa Bay Rays team that seems to be on the come up. And then we can't ignore the big favorite that went down on this Sunday, as it was the Baltimore Orioles, who were plus 250 plus just about everywhere you look. I think that if you went to the right spots, you could have maybe even found $3 Saturday night. They knock off the Yankees 7-5. The Yankees just had J.A. Happ get knocked around in this one in 4 innings pitch. He gave up 4 runs. Sessa came in with 3.1 innings of relief pitching, and he only gave up 1 run, so he didn't necessarily do too bad there. But for the Baltimore Orioles, they were able to get some production out of Trey Boom Boom Mancini, who was able to hit a home run in the 3rd inning. But the real big shot was in the 1st inning, as Renato Nunez was able to go yard for a 3-run shot. That put the Baltimore Orioles up 3-0 in the first inning, and they just did not look back. So some very interesting results going down in baseball. You have a big underdog get the job done there. The Diamondbacks were plus right around 180 on the close and plus $2. They very nearly pulled off the upset there. They weren't able to. And then if you took the Mariners at a plus price, you were happily rewarded there, along with the Rangers. Rangers were a big underdog as well. So very interesting day on Sunday in the world of baseball. And coming up next, we're going to be talking some more hardball, getting you guys ready for the betting season. And that is going to be Gill Alexander, who's going to be joining me to talk a little bit about the stats and analytics of baseball. That is coming up next right here on MLB Overtime Betting.
Greg is going to the bullpen as he makes a call to the Azuña hotline.
And coming in from the bullpen, we've got the right-hander Gill Alexander joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting as broadcast here from the Azuña Tequila Studios out here in beautiful Las Vegas. It is a great pleasure to have Gill join me. As you know, he is on Twitter at Beating the Book, a tremendous host for the Vegas Stats and Information Network, hosts a numbers game, which you can hear 10 to noon Eastern Time, 7 to 9 a.m. Pacific Time, right there on the Vegas Stats and Information Network, which is, oh, by the way, now on both Fubo TV and Sling, along with SiriusXM and obviously VSiN.com. And Gill, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm recovering from college basketball Elite Eight games.
Yeah, me too. It's been a little bit of a hodgepodge for me. I've been breaking even on every one of those games. I get the total right, and then I get the side wrong, I get the side wrong, and then I get the total right. It's just one of those things. And it's much the same way for me in baseball as well. As a lot of these early season games, they've been a little bit random because what I'm noticing is that the teams that are losing these games, they're just not scoring any runs. And the teams that are getting these wins, well, they're winning by 2+ runs and they're just pounding the tar out of the ball. Is it just me, or does it feel like there's just a great imbalance between these games right now?
Well, I said before last season, and I think it manifested. I think it came true, which is I don't think we've ever seen as big a chasm between the haves and have-nots in baseball as we did entering last season. And I think that not only came true last year, but I think it's even wider headed into this year. And you don't want to overreact too much to one day or one weekend of baseball to start the season. But I think that that's what we're going to get. And, you know, opening day alone, Greg, we had 5 shutouts out of the 15-game slate. Forget the 2 games in Japan. We'll call that opening day. But 5 shutouts in 15 games. And I just think you have a sport now that is going to see, you know, and there were like 4 or 5 games. I think there were 4 games that lasted 2 hours and 22 minutes or less. When you don't have base runners, you know, that's what tends to happen. We're seeing home runs, strikeouts, and not a lot of base runners, and just teams that are really good, teams that are really bad. That's baseball today, and I think we're going to see it all year long.
I think so as well. And one of those teams I feel like has been a very nice surprise to start out the year. How about the Seattle Mariners starting out 4-1? I don't know where you gauge this team going into the year, but I have tremendous respect for Jerry Dipoto, the way that he's built up his teams. And it looks like the offseason moves for the Mariners, who many people thought were rebuilding, right now coming through in a big way.
Yeah, I sort of give the nod to Josh Towers, who hangs out with me on VSiN a lot, and I'm sure you've done shows with him as well there. Josh Towers, former major leaguer, who said, you know, when the Mariners were purging all their players this offseason, Robinson Cano and Edwin Diaz most famously, perhaps, not to mention Segura as well, Gene Segura, they had a plan. So, like, right off the bat, you have to give teams credit that have just a plan, because you'd be surprised how many teams, like, you look at it, you're like, I don't even know what they're doing. So there was a plan. Now, Josh took it a step further. He didn't say this on air, but he thought that there was a sort of brawl that happened in the Mariners dugout last year. And he really viewed it as a rift between Latin players and non-Latin players. And what's interesting is that you saw the Mariners purge 3 Latin players of note. Now, not to get too controversial with it, I'm not sure I buy into that, but it is interesting that Josh had that take on it. I do think that the Mariners season win total was low. There was no way to play it under anymore. I think you only could play that over or not. I don't think it's a playoff team, don't get me wrong, but I would not be surprised if they're better than the Angels in the AL West. An Angels team who has surrounded Mike Trout with nobody seemingly always a team riddled with injuries. I think that might be a small surprise in the AL West. I like the Mariners, and I like the young pitching prospect as well. So I think that, again, not a playoff team, but is it outlandish to think that they might flirt with 500? No.
I completely agree with you, as it's Gill Alexander joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And taking a look at the same division, you've got the Oakland A's, a team that lost those first 2 games in Japan. And it's one of those things where I do feel like the A's badly overachieved last year. I certainly don't think that they're going to be at like 75 wins or anything like that, don't get me wrong. But with that said, I do feel like part of the reason why the Mariners might be able to do a little bit better than many people expect this year is just because the A's so badly overachieved this year, and I think there's going to be a little bit of a regression to the mean.
Yeah, I think there might be a lot of a regression. I mean, the A's were super overachieving last year. Listen, you don't want to ever count out a Billy Beane run team, but yeah, everything broke their way. That's the thing with baseball. When there's 162 games, it's more so in this sport than any other sport. When you have 162 points of data, you can sort of overcome negative variance more than you can in other sports. You know, pro football, you have a bad month, you're done. College football, even worse, right? You have a bad few games, you're done. That's your season. Baseball, you could have terrible stretches and overcome that. The A's just maintained this unbelievable ability to overachieve last year, and that's through a few prisms, Pythagorean, through base runs, through one-run outcomes. I don't think that division is good at all, and I think that's what we're getting at here, and that is that I think the Astros are just going to lollygag their way. I mean, just absolutely coast into a division win. I don't think 100 wins is anything outlandish at all, because I think every other team, the only team we haven't discussed is the Rangers. They're terrible. I don't know what they're doing. Speaking of teams that don't have plans, I think the whole division is down. And that's why I think if there was a prop out there that said, hey, could the Mariners finish in second place? What would the yes be on that? I'd be fascinated to know what that number would be.
I would be as well. I do think that, like you said, the Astros probably have the easiest path in that division. And with that said, I think that the easiest division to win in general probably has to be the AL Central. I know that the Indians are currently a little bit banged up. They've got Lindor on the 10-day DL. I know that they're dealing with a couple other injuries as well. They haven't necessarily looked sharp, losing 2 of 3 to the Twins. But with that said, I do think that the Indians, when it's all said and done, should be able to win their division by the largest amount of games of anyone out there in baseball.
You know, I'm of that thinking, too. I was of that thinking. I don't know listen, I think they'll win the division. I think they'll win it easily. Will they win it by the most? I don't know. I think the Astros will have something to say about that. As long as the Indians have the starting pitching that they do, it's really tough to go against that starting pitching with Kluber and Bauer at the top. It's just solid. It's just such a solid rotation. And if there's anything you can harken back to in old school baseball, starting pitching still matters, and they're not a team that's going to do anything crazy with having openers, open games. It'll be starting pitching like it is traditionally. I do think the bullpen's worse than it was in past years. As Paul Sporer from Fangraphs, who comes on my show weekly on a numbers game at VSiN, likes to say, who's playing in their outfield, Gill? Who's playing in their outfield? And as you pointed out, they're banged up early. So the lineup that they're rolling out right now is pretty bad. It's really bad. Carlos Gonzalez would be the only answer to who might be playing in that outfield at this point. So I do think that the Indians are still the best team in that division. But a guy like Sporer thinks, look, they're good, but they're no lock. The Twins, who you brought up, are the only other team in that division that I think has a chance. And they've got some bats there in Minnesota that had been, Miguel Sano being the one that leaps to mind the most, that were dormant last year. And if if someone like him can revert to how he was before, the Twins are always sneaky. I do think the Indians win. I'm going to give the edge to the Astros in terms of the widest margin of victory. By the way, there are props like that offshore. Astros beat the Rangers by 24.5 games over under this year. So you can actually find head-to-heads. At least you could before the season started.
Oh, geez, that is insane. As we've got Gill Alexander joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And Gill, it's going to be really interesting to see how the NL Central plays out. I know that the Brewers, the Cubs, and the Cardinals, they get all the attention. But with that said, one team that I do look at a little bit as being a little bit of a sleeper are the Pirates. I was surprised that on Sunday, Trevor Williams was a plus 125 underdog against the Cincinnati Reds. He was perhaps the best pitcher in baseball during the second half of the season last year. I also do like what Musgrove is able to bring to the rotation as well. They acquire Chris Archer, who I feel is a little overrated, but he's still a decent arm. I do think that the Pirates are a team that might be a good bet on team this year whenever they're getting a plus price.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always price dependent with a team like that. It is such a tough division, right? I mean, it is a tough division, obviously. I'm super bullish on the Cardinals. Goldschmidt has already started off with a tear after getting the big contract. I think that they've got a much better bullpen this year than they did last year. I think they figured things out in the second half. The Cubs are still the Cubs. I think the real thing in that division is I would not be surprised if the Milwaukee Brewers went out and got Craig Kimbrell. And I think that that's sort of the looming thing on the horizon that will sort of, again, distinguish those three teams above it. I like the Pirates. Listen, I don't consider them a threat. I think they're one of those perfect teams. To your point, I mean, you could get a price on them on any given day where they might be undervalued. But I think they're the quintessential team that when you look up in August and you're like, ooh, look at this NL wildcard race. Look at these teams that are still alive, 4 or 5 back in the wildcard race. That they'll be cosmetically alive, but not really alive.
I can see exactly where you're coming from there. Sort of like last year almost with them as well, because the Pirates, they had that really nice spurt towards the middle of the summer. Then they acquire Chris Archer, they go for it, and then they just sort of spiral back down to earth. But with that said, I do think that you are going to be able to get some nice prices with the Pirates this year, or a couple other teams that you feel like might be getting a little bit disrespected, and you might be able to get some good money if you back them as an underdog from a day-to-day basis.
Take a guy like Archer, though, that you mentioned. Like, you know, when a pitcher goes from the American League to the National League, though, I'm always curious to see how that bumps a pitcher up. And I'm not sure we've seen that yet, right, with Archer. He should be able to stand out. If he is really the pitcher that he has been made out to be, he should take that bump and having to face a pitcher in the 9-hole and just make a monster career out of it. I don't know. Josh Towers of the world, again, to quote Josh, who's been on my show all the time, he thinks Archer is tremendously overrated. That's obviously going to go a long way for the Pirates in determining how they're going to do. That's where the ceiling is for me, though. I just, what I was saying before, I don't know that they're going to be a threat in the end. But yes, value on a given day. That's always the thing, too, right? The season win total market was something that we look at before the season starts. What is not necessarily consistent with that is how a team is priced on a day-to-day basis. And oftentimes you get a huge difference between the value of a team before a season and how they're actually priced on a day-to-day basis. You know, take the extreme. The Yankees, even though there were season win totals in the mid-90s, you know, on a day-to-day basis, obviously they're playing the Orioles here, so it's a bit of an exaggeration. First weekend of the season, they will be priced in a way that could make them a 107 win kind of team. So I think with baseball betting, you always have to be aware of that. And you may see with a team like the Pirates that they're actually undervalued in a day-to-day market.
I'm right there with you. And I feel like one of those things that you have to evaluate whenever you're betting on a day-to-day basis, bullpens. How many times haven't we seen it just in the first couple days alone that a team is up by 2 or 3 runs? We saw it with the Mariners a couple days ago against the Red Sox, and then they just completely blow the game. I feel like the most important thing when handicapping these games is bullpens. I don't know where you fall on this, but I am always a believer that if you're able to properly handicap these bullpens and you're betting from a full game basis, you're going to be very successful in baseball.
I think you're right, but that's what makes betting baseball today so much more difficult, in my opinion, than it was 3 to 5 years ago. You know, 3 to 5 years ago, Greg, you asked me, what's my favorite sport to bet on? And before you can even finish the sentence, I'd say baseball. And there would be really a distant second from that. Today, I'll tell you, pre-flop baseball is very difficult because you're right. Bullpens mean everything, but bullpens now are used in a way that is so much more unpredictable than ever before. One, they tend to yank starters. Managers do. Not every manager, but most managers tend to yank starters sooner than they used to. Some teams, like the Rays most famously last year, go with an opener. They don't even start a starter. Yes, if you can harness bullpens, God bless you. I believe it's a much more difficult endeavor than it ever was before. To me, I think one of the big things I'm looking at here early in the season, beyond that, is you see a lot of pitchers here early on, not a lot, but more than a negligible amount, where velocity is down. And again, with the caveat of you don't want to overreact too much to one outing. It is worth noting that someone like Zach Greinke's velocity is way down. It is worth noting that Chris Sale, Panic in Boston, his velocity was down just 2.5 miles per hour on his fastball, but that's everything, right? Those 2.5 miles per hour from like 95 to 92.5 roughly is everything. So that's really what I'm watching here early in the season. I think for those who might have trouble, I don't know, it depends how your handicapping is with baseball. Are you using a predictive model? Are you doing it with an eye test? However you approach your handicapping of Major League Baseball, for me, one of the things that is most tangible here early in the season is watch the velocity of these starters. That is such a huge data point to focus in on because it affects everything, obviously swinging strike rate and that sort of thing. And people can mash. Greinke, who's had this problem throughout spring training, and some would even argue early in other seasons, something to watch for sure. And Chris Sale and others, something to watch. Meanwhile, the opposite of that, though, Greg, not to babble, is someone like Justin Verlander, who seems to have no problem with his velocity at 36 years old. So it's a very interesting thing.
Absolutely is, as we've got Gill Alexander of the Vegas Hits and Information Network joining me right here on the horn on MLB overtime betting. And Gill, it's something that I find so interesting because you bring up velocity and guys are able to hit them. And at the same time, we do notice that in a lot of these northern parts of the United States, you got the cities like your Chicagos and everything like that. It is a little bit colder out there, and it allows the ball to not travel quite as far. You see fewer home runs and everything like that. Do you look at a little bit more unders towards the beginning of the year and then more overs towards the summertime? Or is it one of those cases where the drop in velocity with some of these starters actually irons it out?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. I think that falls into the category of things that we feel like we might be smarter than we are about, because I think all of that's built into the line, typically. Many years ago, where Roxy Roxborough, the famous founder of Las Vegas Sports Consultants, he was a baseball bettor who figured out ballpark factor before it was even called ballpark factor, right? Like he, as a bettor, figured out that market inefficiency before the actual books did. I think we're far away from that now, though I will say this. I mean, the one caveat that I would put to that is keep in mind there are going to be artificial floors to some of these totals. So we saw it on opening day, right? Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer, and that total was what? 6.5, I believe it was, something like that. Maybe 6, but I think it was 6.5. I guess my point is that there's going to be some matchups where the market will never drop it down to where it really ought to be. You might see in the postseason a total get below a 6, and even that's a recent phenomenon in the last decade, where you see a 5.5 creep in a postseason game. But you'll never see it during the regular season, certainly not opening day or opening weekend this early in the season. So keep that in mind, I think, when you assess totals. Other than that, look to see what the temperatures are, but you're not the only one with a Doppler, I guess is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And Gill, do you have any advice for anyone that's really playing these MLB games earlier in the year? Just because I know that betting baseball out here in late March, early April, just a little bit different than it is when baseball is the only sport going on in, say, July and August.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is there's a couple things that I like to do early in the season now in baseball. And one is look for, when we're talking about, let's talk about a futures market first of all. Look for teams that you assess to be good before the season started. See if they swoon early and then pounce on them in a futures market where you'll actually have better value than you did before the season started in a pre-flop market largely devoid of any value at all. The Dodgers were 16-26 out of the gates last year. I pounced on them at 25-1 to win it all at that point. They didn't win it. They got to the World Series, obviously fell short, but you get the idea. So I think that's one thing to look on with betting baseball early. As far as a day-to-day standpoint, yeah, think about teams like the Orioles. The Orioles, who are going to be, by any measure, are going to be atrocious this year, even though they're 1-1. Even though they're 1-1, actually got a win in Game 2 against the Yankees. The Orioles' first 55 games of the season, the schedule is murder. Can they win 10 of those games? Something you have to ask yourself. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is, based on what their price is, if you see them at plus, 285 or whatever it is that looks astronomical, or even higher here this week with the Yankees, you have to ask yourself, as all baseball bettors do, is it a positive EV situation? In other words, if you ran that game 10 times, if you ran it 100, would betting on them at, say, and let's just use the round number, at plus 300, ultimately be of benefit to you? Would it be a positive expected value? And I think with the Orioles, they're so bad that you have to really wonder if it's not really astronomical, if it's even worth betting them at plus 285, plus 280. The flip side of that is, once you get a lead late with the Orioles, Michael Givens pretty good. They have a back end that's credible. So I think you have to keep that part in mind also. So I just make those assessments. People who are going to fade them every day blindly, you're going to get tripped up every once in a while. You will. They're a major league team. They're going to win, a certain amount of games. But if you bet them blindly, conversely, also, you could be banging your head against the wall. It's one of the things that I've been saying on a numbers game is, for those of us who have bet baseball with a predictive model for so many years, I think the biggest thing I can sort of put forth is reconsider everything you are doing in today's have and have-nots baseball. Because even if your model says on a daily basis, oh, wow, look, there's value on the Orioles betting them at plus, 295. Your human brain enters that at some point and says, do I really want to sit through this? This crappy team, even though my model, I guess what I'm saying is don't be too arrogant about your model. They may just be worse than your model thinks they are. The converse of that is, do you really want to lay that much on a team like the Yankees? So I think there's all kinds of assessments like that you have to make. It makes baseball betting a little more difficult for those of us who have been very mechanical about it in the past. I think that's the biggest takeaway. The haves and have-nots make mechanical baseball betting much more difficult than it once was. And I think there is, as much as I love math, I think there's more feel to this now. Not a majority of it being feel, but I think there's more feel and more intangibles that you have to look at on a daily basis. I hope that makes sense. Yeah. That's a long way of saying, Greg, that for those of us who have old school math models, it's tougher now.
Absolutely. And Gill, I'd like to close it up with this. Where can the good people out there find you on social media and all the tremendous work you do at the Vegas Stats and Information Network?
At Beating the Book is my Twitter. That's where I do really all of my in-between shows talks, really. The show is a numbers game on VSiN, 7 to 9 Pacific, 10 to noon Eastern, Sirius XM, Channel 204. I do a weekly show with Jay Rude, the Vice President of Race and Sorts at MGM Resorts International, called Behind the Book, which is featured on all of MGM's Facebook sites, and also, of course, have my podcast, the Beating the Book podcast, which is year-round.
Terrific. A big thanks to Gill for joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And now it is that time where I give you a side and total on every game on today's betting board as we touch them all.
Hey, I'm Steve Heitner, the guy who uttered the famous phrase, "That's gold." And that's the inspiration of my new podcast, That's Gold with Steve Heitner. We talk sports, sports betting, movies, comedy, food, drink, Vegas, music, movies, and more. 5 days a week. Did I say movies twice? Look, guys love it, whether they're hip or worried about breaking a hip. Find us on Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify and Stitcher. That's Gold with me, Steve Heitner.
Welcome back to MLB Overtime. Greg is throwing a gem, so yeah, he better not blow it.
A big thanks to Gill Alexander of the Vegas Stats and Information Network for joining me in the last segment as we're back here on MLB Overtime Betting, broadcasting from the Azuñia Tequila Studios out here in Las Vegas. And now it is that time. I give you a side and total on every game on today's betting board, and we do so as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Note that any changes that are made to these plays can be noted up on my Twitter page at unit_81. Obviously, some of these plays are locked in. Other of these plays are going to be stuck out in limbo a little bit, and I will be noting that as well. And we start at the top of the Vegas betting board as we've got 901, 902. The St. Louis Cardinals head to Pittsburgh to face off against the Pirates. The Pirates trot out their Chris Archer. Meanwhile, taking the hill for the St. Louis Cardinals is going to be Adam Wainwright. Currently, I am seeing this number getting steamed as we speak. There are some places that have the Cardinals as low as plus 113, but I've seen this jump to plus 120 and even a plus 122 out there with the total of 7.5 at minus 110 both ways. I'm seeing 1-8 out there with the under at minus 120 and the over at even. But with that said, this is the one in which I had to take over. I took over 7.5 at minus 110. I do think that it's going to be runs aplenty in this game. Adam Wainwright, not quite what he once was. And Chris Archer has been one of the better fade pitchers out there. I have absolutely no idea why, but Chris Archer just tries to strike out everyone on the face of planet Earth and leads to him just jacking up his pitch count way too much. So you're going to be having to rely heavily on this Pittsburgh Pirates bullpen, which it's not necessarily great to say the least. You've got a couple guys out there that are able to do a decent job of being able to hold down the fort. I don't have as much faith in it as I do the Cardinals bullpen. I know that Jordan Hicks obviously blew that save yesterday against the Milwaukee Brewers, but with that said, I have a bit more faith in the St. Louis Cardinals bullpen in this situation, and the Cardinals obviously have the better bats out there. You've got Paul Goldschmidt, who is really raking for this team, 4 home runs already. Colton Wong is batting over 500. Now, obviously, he's not going to be batting 500 for the year. You still got Yadier Molina as well. I like that he's been able to give this team a little bit of something still at his advanced age. Matt Carpenter at the top of the lineup as well. Paul DeJong has actually been producing a little bit for this team as well. And then for the Pittsburgh Pirates, you just don't have quite as much. Corey Dickerson has a home run for this team. Francisco Cervelli does a good job behind the dish. He's able to drive in a couple runs as well. And the Pirates are coming off a nice 5-0 win against the Cincinnati Reds. They were able to get a nice win out of Trevor Williams. But with that said, I don't know what you're going to be able to get out of guys like Sterling Marte and company. Jung-Ho Kong has been a nice addition to this team as he missed the past couple years due to, well, some not-so-savory issues. I'm going to ride with the Cardinals on this spot, going to take the plus price, and I'm on this total over. Both these plays are locked in. Staying in the NL Central, you got 903, 904. The Milwaukee Brewers are on the road to Cincinnati to face off against the Reds. Tanner Roark going to take the bump for the Reds. Meanwhile, the Milwaukee Brewers send out their Zach Davies. The total on this one, 8.5 minus 110 both ways across the board on the over and the under. And currently, it is the Milwaukee Brewers who are a little bit of an underdog. I'm seeing them as high as plus 110 in some places, seeing them as low as plus 102 in others. And currently, if you like the Reds, you're going to be laying between minus 112 and minus 120. Tanner Roark had a better end to the year last year than he had a start, but with that said, Tanner Roark is a guy that was not very good with the Nationals last year. I think that he got off to a 4-12 start. I know that ESPN is right now listing Anthony DeScalfani, but it seems as though Roark is going to be the starter in this one. Zach Davies, meanwhile, he's not necessarily great for the Milwaukee Brewers, but at the same time, he's not terrible, is I guess the best way you can put it. He's a middle-of-the-road starter. He was 17-9 back in 2017 for this team. He struggled last year, but he's a guy that's not necessarily going to get a whole lot of swings and misses. When he had that good year in 2017, he was only registering about 6 strikeouts per 9 innings, but what he did a good job of was being able to limit walks. He was pitching to contact, and he was able to allow guys to not take him out of the yard. And with the Cincinnati Reds, you've got a couple power bats in there. Joey Votto and Eugenio Suarez are obviously guys that are able to rake for this team, but you take a look at the middle of the lineup, it's just not very good for this team. You've got Yasiel Puig, and I obviously like Yasiel Puig, but Tucker Barnard, not really much to write home about. Jose Iglesias at the shortstop spot, he's not going to scare anyone. Jose Peraza, I feel like the jury's still out on him. He had 14 home runs last year, and he's off to a pretty decent start this year, but I don't know what you're going to get from him game to game. And meanwhile, with the Milwaukee Brewers, they are just pounding the ball right now. In each of their first 4 games of the year, they've had at least 4 runs. You've got Lorenzo Cain. Christian Yelich has 4 straight games with a home run. He has been absolutely dynamic for this team. You've got Ryan Braun at the 3 spot. Travis Shaw is doing a good job. Jesus Aguilar is off to a little bit of a slow start, but you still got guys like Mike Moustafiks and Pena at the catcher position along with Yasmani Grandal, who have been really switching off as well. So I feel like with the Brewers, you've got some great bats. I think they're going to be able to get to Tanner Roark. I think that they get 5+ runs in this game, and I think that the Brewers are going to be able to take it home. So for that reason, both these plays locked in. Going to be taking the Brewers on the plus price, and I'm going to be taking this total over. 905, 906 on the betting rotation. It is the Cubs heading to Atlanta to face off against the Braves. Sean Newcomb takes the bump for the Atlanta Braves, and Kyle Hendricks goes for the Cubs. Currently, it is a total of 8 shaded over at between minus 115 and minus 120. If you like 8.5, the over on that one is even and the under is minus 120. Meanwhile, it is currently a pretty much a pick'em game across the board. Right now, I'm seeing the Braves as high as plus 100, as low as minus 102, and the Cubs are between minus 110 and minus 108, so pretty stagnant line across the board. I do have to go with the better pitcher in this one in Sean Newcomb, though. We all remember what Newcomb was able to do, being able to toss a near no-hitter last year. He was very good for this team, and the Braves, they need a shot in the arm because they've been using a lot of young guys recently. They've been really going through their bullpen left and right because they've right now got Michael Fultonavich and Kevin Gausman on the 10-day injured list. Meanwhile, with the Cubs, right now Brandon Morrow is hurt. Xavier Cedeno is also hurt, so their relief pitching is a little bit in the dumps. And even though the Atlanta Braves have not been getting the job done with regards to their arms, they've actually been getting some good hitting. Freddie Freeman has been doing a solid job for this team so far this year. They brought in Matt Joyce. He's been able to give this team a home run already. They also signed in the offseason Josh Donaldson. You've got Ronald Acuna Jr. out there along with Ozzie Albies. So this is a solid lineup. And for the Cubs, you've also got a bunch of guys that are able to rake. They're coming off a game in which both teams got to double digits against the Texas Rangers. Now, obviously, the ball is just flying out of the ballpark when you head to Arlington, but with the Cubs, you've got so many bats in this lineup. Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Javi Baez, Wilson Contreras, David Bodie, the list goes on and on and on. They've got so many bats. I don't know what team gets held below 4 runs in this game. So for that reason, I did wind up taking this total over. I'm currently waiting to see if the over of 8 gets down to minus 110 juice. If not, I will probably take 8.5 at even money. So I'm currently waiting on that price. But with that said, I am going to be on the over regardless. And I'm going to be on the Braves regardless in this one as well. Currently, I'm in wait and see mode to see if I can get a little bit of a plus price, see if I can get something like a plus 110 since the public really does like to seam up the Cubs. But I do feel like Sean Newcomb going to be able to give this Braves team a quality start. And I think that he's going to be able to give a little bit of relief to a taxed bullpen. So for that reason, I'm holding off on both plays, but I am going to be on the Braves and the over in the spot. 907, 908 on the betting rotation. It is the Mets in Miami to face off against the Marlins. Steven Matz is going for the New York Mets, and for the Miami Marlins, you've got Craig Smith on the bump. Total on this one I am seeing is 7.5 to 8. If you like 8, the under is between minus 120 and minus 125 with the over plus 105 or even money. If you like 7.5, you're going to be paying a little bit of juice as the over is between minus 115 and I'm actually seeing a minus 110 out there as well. And then the under is between minus 110 and minus 115 on 7.5 as well. This is a spot where I've really got to look at the New York Mets. They are off to a very good start to the season and they've been doing a very good job of being able to hit the ball. Steven Matz not necessarily a pitcher that I would consider to be great, but with that said, he is a guy that has been able to get the job done throughout his career. Craig Smith is a guy that I'm just not very bullish on with the Miami Marlins. Last year, he certainly had his ups and his downs, but with the Marlins so far this year, they've gotten a little bit more production out of the bats than I expected. They signed Curtis Granderson in the offseason, and he's been good at the top of the lineup. I just question what he's going to be able to give them throughout the season. Smith last year, getting back to him, he was 5-6 with a 4.19 ERA. He did a very good job of being able to strike guys out, but his big bugaboo was walks. He had 33 of them in 77 and a third innings, and I think that that's going to play into the hands of the New York Mets, who really revamped their lineup as well. They lost their most recent game to the Nationals by a count of 5-6, but the game before they were able to put up 11 runs. Brandon Nimmo at the top of the lineup is in a little bit of a slump for this team, but Robinson Cano already being able to pay off dividends for this team. J.D. Davis is in the middle of the lineup, and Pete Alonso has been giving this team a little bit of production along with Michael Conforto and Rosario as well. So I like what I'm seeing out of this team, and I do think that with both these pitchers on the mound, it really does lend itself to an over. I know that Miami has been traditionally a bit more of a pitcher-friendly ballpark, but with that said, I do think that Craig Smith is going to be issuing some free passes. I think he's going to be hit hard by this Mets lineup, and I just am not high on the Miami Marlins bullpen at all either. So for that reason, I am on this total over, and I am on the Mets in this spot. With the Mets, I am in wait-and-see mode because I noticed a lot of money was coming in on the Miami Marlins, so I'm going to try to see if I'm able to get a minus 120, but I already locked in the over of 7.5 at minus 110. 909, 910 on the betting rotation. You've got the San Francisco Giants going on the road to face off against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Julio Arias is going for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and Drew Pomeranz going for the San Francisco Giants. The Giants are plus 180 across the board, and the Dodgers minus 200. The total on this one pretty flat. 8.5. The total is 8 with the under at minus 120 and the over even money. I know that the Giants have not necessarily been meshing so far this year, to say the least, and I'm putting that very, very politely. As you take a look at their trip to Petco Park, well, it didn't necessarily go well as they went 1-3 in that road trip. They wound up not being able to break 3 runs in any of those games. But with that said, what are we going to get out of Julio Arias, for one? 2, the Dodgers bullpen appears to be quite awful right now. And 3, we also have Drew Pomeranz on the mound, who was quite awful himself. All this lends itself to the over. I have no idea why this total is right now shaded to the under. I know that it's Dodger Stadium. You've got 2 total gas cans up there pitching. This is a game in which I've really got to take over. I know that Julio Arias showed a lot of promise out there in the postseason, but he was doing that in 1 or 2 inning spurts. He tossed a couple good innings in an exhibition game apparently a couple days ago against the Los Angeles Angels. Whoop-de-stinkin'-do. I'm taking the over in this spot, and I just have a tough time backing Julio Arias, who's coming off some Tommy John surgery a few years ago and everything like that, making his first start. So for that reason, even though the San Francisco Giants haven't necessarily been mashing, I think that guys like Brandon Belt and Buster Posey are going to be able to get a couple hits. I like the way that Evan Longoria has been able to hit it in the middle of the lineup as well. I think that they're finally going to be able to get something going with Eric Kratz being able to provide something in regards to the catcher position as well. I know that they've been moving Buster Posey to first base a lot as well. And then Yangervis Solarte is also a guy that towards the middle of the lineup is going to be able to provide this team a little bit of pop as well. I just am bullish on the Giants in this spot just because I don't know what you're going to get out of Urias. I think that the Dodgers are going to get a lot of runs themselves. You've got Justin Turner, Jock Peterson, Kike Hernandez, Cody Bellinger, Austin Barnes. Murderer's row of hitters goes on and on and on. But I just can't lay $2 with the Dodgers, and I'm unsure they're able to get the job done on the run line because you just don't have a lot of solid pitching out there for number 1, the starter in Arias, and 2, the bullpen in general. So for that reason, we're taking a shot on the San Francisco Giants with that massive plus price. I was able to get plus 185. Obviously, we'll still advise a play at plus 180, and also locked in the over of 8 with the juice even money there. So those are my plays on that one. And as we move on to 9, 11, 9, 12 on the betting rotation, it is the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they're going to be facing off against the San Diego Padres. For the Padres, they are trotting out there at Stram, and for the Arizona Diamondbacks, it is Merrill Kelly. The total on this one is 7.5, and that is shaded under at minus 115 if you like it. And this is pretty steady across the board. I'm seeing the Diamondbacks between plus 142 and plus 148. Meanwhile, the Padres are minus 155 in just about every shop. I'm seeing one minus 158 out there as well. These are 2 guys that really don't have much starting experience whatsoever. Stram was coming out of the bullpen last year, and Kelly, well, this is his first career start. I know that this game is in Petco Park. The Diamondbacks have actually been doing a good job of hitting so far this year. Adam Jones already has a pair of home runs for the Arizona Diamondbacks. I like what Walker is giving them in the middle of the lineup as well. He's a young guy that has really been on a nice little come up for the Diamondbacks. Now, their bullpen has been a little bit taxed because they played a 13-inning game. They wound up losing that game to the Dodgers yesterday by a count of 8-7. They wound up blowing that lead, so that was obviously not good. But with that said, the Arizona Diamondbacks, they've got some good bats out there with Dean Peralta. You've got Gerard Dyson at the top of the lineup. Escobar's doing a nice job at third base. Ketel Marte is able to provide this team a little bit of pop, though he's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start this year. Noah Ahmad towards the bottom of the lineup, also able to do a good job of being able to get on base. And with the San Diego Padres, you've got a couple bats that I feel like are looking to bust out. Manny Machado has gotten off to a slow start this year. I'm not very surprised by that, but you've got Eric Hosmer at the number 2 spot. Reyes has been doing a nice job at the cleanup position. Will Myers has been getting off to a nice start this year, and I like Fernando Tatis Jr. and all the upside that he provides along with Margot out there at the center field position. This feels like a game in which both teams should be able to get to 4+ runs. I am very bullish on both these lineups, and I think that with these 2 starting pitchers, you're just not getting a whole lot. The Diamondbacks are a team that they really don't have great relief pitching, but with Strand making his first career start, I feel like he could get shelled, and I do have a little bit more faith in the Dodgers being able to get more runs in this game. So for that reason, I am going to go with the Arizona Diamondbacks getting the plus price, and I'm going to take this total over. I am currently in wait-and-see mode on the Diamondbacks to see if I can get plus 150 or better, but I already locked in over 7.5 at minus 105 juice. Game 9-13, 9-14 on the betting rotation. It is the Chicago White Sox facing off against the Cleveland Indians. Currently, for the White Sox, they are trotting out there Ivan Nova, and for the Cleveland Indians, you've got Mike Clevenger. I am seeing across the board the Cleveland Indians between minus 170 and minus 175 favorites. And then if you want to take a shot on the White Sox, you're getting between plus 155 and plus 160. Total on this one is 7 shaded to the over. Minus 120 is the over in most spots. I'm seeing minus 115 out there as well, which means that the under is between even money and minus 105. This is the spot where I'm going to take the dog once again. I'm all about the Chicago White Sox in this spot. I do feel like Ivan Nova is a little bit of an undervalued starter. He was a guy that had about a 500 record with a 4 ERA last year. Not necessarily lighting the world on fire, but with that said, he's able to get the job done. Meanwhile, Mike Clevenger, he gets overvalued, I feel like, in the market a little bit too much. He had a nice year last year. He was 13-8 with a 3.02 ERA, but it just feels like sometimes really struggles with his command. He had a walk per every 3 innings last year, so that's a little bit of a woe for him. It also seems like sometimes when he gets hit hard as well. He sometimes just seems to clump these runs together. And with the Chicago White Sox, though they don't necessarily hit for contact very well, they don't draw their walks, they do have some guys with some power. Yohan Moncada is off to a nice start this year. Jose Abreu already has 2 home runs and 4 RBIs. They haven't really gotten one of the guys I really like for this team get it going quite yet in Daniel Palka. But when they were able to get him going, it's going to be good for this team. They also were able to sign Eloy Jimenez in the offseason. He's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start, but I think that he's going to start to hit, and then they add Yonder Alonso in the offseason as well. So they certainly do have some mashers. And for the Cleveland Indians, they're still a little bit banged up. Jason Kipnis and Francisco Lindor started the season on the 10-day injured list along with Bradley Zimmer. Zimmer not necessarily the guy that you look to in this lineup, but they haven't really gotten a whole lot of offense going. Carlos Santana doing a nice job out there for this team. He's already hitting 500, and Hanley Ramirez has produced a home run, but the Indians are doing a poor job of being able to get on base. In that series against the Twins, they scored a combined, I believe it was 5 runs in those 3 games. That was very poor for this team. I do like the upside that they have in Jake Bauers, but he's only hitting 111 for the season. Last year he hit right around 200 when he was with the Tampa Bay Rays. Jose Ramirez also off to a slow start this year. Leonis Martin has not delivered what you expected them to at the leadoff spot. I think that they're going to be able to get going, but with that said, the Cleveland Indians off to a little bit of a rough start so far. I do think that this is a total that is going to be able to go over. I think that Mike Clevenger is going to give up quite a few runs to the White Sox, and I think that the White Sox are going to be able to ding a couple home runs out of a little bit more of a hitter-friendly ballpark out there in Cleveland. So with that said, I'm going to be taking the White Sox and the over on the spot. I'm right now trying to see if I could get the White Sox more around plus 170, plus 175. I'm trying to see if I can get even juice on over 7 as well. So a little bit of wait and see mode there, but I am going to be on both of these plays. Next up, we've got the Detroit Tigers going on the road to face off against the New York Yankees. This is 9:15, 9:16 on the betting rotation. The Tigers are plus 185 to plus 200 underdogs, so this one is varying quite a bit. If you like the Yankees, you're laying between 210 and 220 with the total on this game at 8.5 in most spots. The over is at between minus 120 and minus 125. The under is between even juice and plus 105. There is 1-9 out there as well. If you like that 9, the over is plus 105. The under is minus 125. And taking the hill for the New York Yankees is going to be Domingo Germán. And meanwhile, for the Detroit Tigers, you got Tyson Ross going on the hill. And you know what? I actually do like Tyson Ross in this spot. I know that he didn't necessarily light the world on fire last year with the San Diego Padres, but this is a guy that actually has some good plus stuff. And when he was with the St. Louis Cardinals, mostly in a relief role, he actually did quite a good job of being able to avoid contact. So I do think that Tyson Ross is going to be in a little bit of a bounce back spot. He has a little bit of something to prove. And with the Detroit Tigers, they seem to have gotten the bats going a little bit against the Toronto Blue Jays, and they're facing off against a guy in Germán that was absolutely awful last year. He had 14 starts with the Yankees. He was essentially demoted to the bullpen. He's a guy that gets a lot of strikeouts. He had 102 strikeouts in 85.2 innings, but he also had 33 walks in that time. He pitches the contact as guys at 242 off of him, and he just seemed to give up hard contact as well, which is not a good combination when you're out there in Yankee Stadium. Chris Stewart is a guy that needs to get things going for the Tigers, but Jose Candelario was able to have a very big day yesterday against the Blue Jays. You've got Miguel Cabrera who's still working his way back from an injury. Seems like he's starting to get things going a little bit, but it's sort of a day-by-day process with them. I do like that they have out in the middle of the lineup Nico Goodrum, who's a guy that's really able to mash the ball. He had 3 hits in their game yesterday against the Toronto Blue Jays, and then Nick Castellanos is another guy that is towards the lineup that I think is going to be able to drive in some runs. Meanwhile, I think the Yankees are certainly going to be able to get their runs. They obviously had their woes against the Baltimore Orioles, to say the least. They were leaving a lot of men on. When you got a lineup that includes the likes of Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Luke Voigt, Miguel Andujar, Gleyber Torres and company, you're going to be able to generate a lot of offense. They also added DJ LeMahieu and Troy Tulowitzki in the offseason, so no shortage of bats in this Yankees lineup. I do think that Tyson Ross is going to be dinged up a little bit, but I do think that he's going to be able to hold up, and I'm going to take the plus price here with the Detroit Tigers. I'm right now trying to see if the public is going to be on the Detroit Tigers a little bit more, so that way I can get a little bit more than $2. But with that said, I'm going to be betting the Tigers here. I already locked in over 9 at plus 105. Yankee Stadium is just such a hitter-friendly ballpark that I wanted that plus number. So those are going to be my plays on that game. I'm going to be on the Tigers in the spot, but like I said, just waiting for a little bit more of a plus price. Game 917, 918 on the Bang rotation. You've got the Baltimore Orioles going on the road to go north of the border to take on the Toronto Blue Jays. David Hess is on the bump for the Baltimore Orioles. Meanwhile, for the Toronto Blue Jays, it is Sean Reed Foley. Oh, gosh. This is not a good pitching matchup, to say the least. And with that said, I am regrettably on the under in this game because we notice that the ball just stopped flying out of the Sky Dome like it typically does. Right now, there's just been a little bit of a power outage, and I noticed that the Blue Jays just have not been getting a lot of offense generated so far this year. You've got a bunch of guys that are trying to hit for power, and they're not doing necessarily a good job of being able to get on base. Justin Smoke was able to drive in 4 runs in that series against the Detroit Tigers, and he had a home run, but Brandon Drury not doing the best job at the top of the lineup. Meanwhile, with the Baltimore Orioles, they were actually really able to get a lot of runs generated against the New York Yankees. You've got to give them a lot of credit for being able to do a solid job of both get some home runs and being able to get on base in general. Jonathan Villar at the top of the lineup hasn't necessarily gotten going too much, but Trey Boom Boom Mancini has been able to drive in some runs for this team. You've also got their new catcher, Jonathan Sucre, who was able to give this team a 3 RBI game when they took on the Yankees on Saturday, so you really have to like his development as well. And then with the Baltimore Orioles as well, also have to be a little bit impressed with what you're getting towards the middle of the lineup. Some of these guys that you didn't think were going to be able to step up, like Rio Ruiz and their new designated hitter, and Renato Nunez have been able to give this team something. Chris Davis, well, he's still Chris Davis. He stinks. But I do think that the Blue Jays are going to be able to win this game by a couple runs. I have this being a Toronto Blue Jays 5-3 win. So that is a reason why I'm going to take the under here. Dylan Hess has already pitched so far this year because he had to come in relief during that Yankees series. So I don't think that he's going to be able to give this team too many strong innings. And the Baltimore Orioles relievers, well, let's just face it, they're not very good. And I do think that the Blue Jays actually have a little bit of a better bullpen than I expected so far this year. I'm on the Blue Jays run line, which I'm seeing at plus 130 in some spots. This is varying quite a bit. I'm seeing plus 120 and plus 130. I was able to grab a plus 130, and I locked this game in at under 9 at minus 110 juice. So both those plays locked in on the under and the Blue Jays run line in this spot. We move on to 919, 920 on the betting rotation, as it is the Houston Astros facing off against the Texas Rangers. For the Rangers, you've got Drew Smyly taking the hill. Meanwhile, for the Houston Astros, it is Brad Peacock. The Astros are between a minus 147 and minus 151 favorite. Meanwhile, you take a look at the Texas Rangers. They are getting between plus 137 and plus 140. Draw on this one ranging between 9 and 9.5. If you like over 9, that is minus 120. If you like over 9.5, you're getting plus 105 there. If you like the under at 9.5, that is minus 125. And if you like the under at 9, you are getting even money in that spot. This is a game in which I've really got to take over. The Texas Rangers are proving that they have absolutely no pitching whatsoever. In that game against the Chicago Cubs, every one of them just went over, and they went over by a very wide margin. Heck, you take a look at the game on Sunday, both teams were able to get double-digit amount of runs. You've got absolutely no relief pitching whatsoever for the Texas Rangers, and now you trot out there a guy in Drew Smyly that hasn't pitched since dinosaurs roamed the earth. This is a guy that has been dealing with so many injuries that it's not even funny. His last full season was in 2016, for goodness sakes. How do you have any faith in him whatsoever? Meanwhile, Brad Peacock, not necessarily the most stout starter, I would say, that the Houston Astros had, But with that said, in 2017, he was 13-2 with a 3 ERA. He mainly came out of the bullpen last year. He made just one start, but he was very solid as a reliever. He held opponents to a batting average of .226, did a good job of being able to fan 96 batters in 65 innings, so I like what I saw out of him there. He's a guy that has starting experience, and with the Houston Astros, they really struggled with their bats in that series against the Tampa Bay Rays, but I do think that this move out here to Texas is exactly what they need because they had either 1 or 2 runs in each of the last 3 games. I think that George Springer is going to be able to get things going along with Alex Bregman. Both these guys have been struggling a little bit with the bat. You've also got Reddick, who has been doing a good job of being able to get on base. I think that he's going to be able to emerge with a home run or 2, and then you've got Yuli Gurriel, who's able to be a nice stabilizing force right around the 6 or 7 spot, and then obviously you can't forget about Correa as well. Meanwhile, for the Texas Rangers, this is just an all-or-nothing team. Elvis Andrus and Sin-Shu Chu do a good job of being able to get on base for this team, but you've got so many guys that they either swing for the fences or they swing and hit absolute air. Delino DeShields Jr. not doing a good job of being able to get on base. Joey Gallo, he is Mr. All-or-Nothing. Rougned Odor seems to be a guy that's either hitting a home run or he's doing nothing at all. I will say that Hunter Benz is off to a nice start to the year, but you also don't know what you're going to get out of Asdrubal Cabrera and Forsythe as well. So for that reason, I am all about the Astros in this spot. I wound up taking the Astros on the run line. I am seeing them at between plus 105 and even money. I'm trying to see if this sticks up to more around plus 110, plus 115, somewhere in that neighborhood, but I'm going to be on the Astros run line in this spot, and I wound up taking the plus price with over 9.5. I think that both these teams are going to be scoring a lot of runs, and I see this combined total being over 10. We move on to 921, 922 on the betting rotation. It is the Boston Red Sox, and they are hitting the road to face off against the Oakland A's. For the Boston Red Sox, you've got David Price taking the mound. And for the Oakland A's, you've got a little bit of an unknown making a start for this team as Aaron Brooks is going to be taking the hill. And Aaron Brooks is quite intriguing as he was coming up in the Brewers staff. He hasn't pitched in the major leagues since 2015. It really makes you wonder what in the heck you're going to get out of him. From what I hear, he's got some good stuff and he's able to strike guys out, but this is a spot where you really have to trust David Price. David Price was lights out in the postseason last year. He was able to rectify a lot of those demons. He does a good job of being able to strike guys out. He had 177 strikeouts last year, 3.6 ERA. He went 16-7, did a good job of being able to limit his walks. David Price is an enigma to a lot of people, but I have a lot of faith in David Price being able to get this win. And I do think that with the Oakland A's, they're going to be probably going to the bullpen very, very often, which I think is going to mitigate some of the runs that are going to be scored in this game. I think that David Price is going to have a very good outing. I think the Red Sox are going to be held in check just because they're going to be seeing a bevy of arms from the Oakland A's. I don't think that they are seriously going to be keeping Brooks out there for more than a couple innings. So this is a total that I'm going to take under. I already locked it in at under 8 at even money. Currently, if you take a look at the total across Las Vegas, the under on 8 runs is between minus 105 and even money, and the over, if you like over 8 runs, is between minus 115 and minus 120, and I almost forgot to give the actual spread, as it is currently the Red Sox between minus 134 and minus 136 favorites, and the A's are between plus 125 and plus 126 across the board. You guys already know what I'm on right now with the under of 8 runs at even money. I'm also on the Red Sox in this spot as well. This is a spot where I actually took a look at the Red Sox run line. I was able to get a plus 120 price on that one. I'm seeing mostly plus 120 out there, seeing a couple plus 115s as well. Either way, I advise a play here. I think that the Red Sox are going to be able to snap this skid as they lost 3 of 4 to the Seattle Mariners. In all those games, they were doing a good job of being able to drive in runs. You've got so many guys like Mookie Betts, JD Martinez, Xander Bogaerts and company that are able to mash for this team. Heck, when you got Jackie Bradley Jr. at the number 9 spot, you know that your lineup is pretty stout. And with the Oakland A's, I've been talking about it with a few of our guests. I already talked about it with Gail Alexander of the Vegas Stats and Information Network that I expect a lot of regression for this team. Marcus Semien at the top of the lineup is doing a great job of being able to get on base. Steven Piscotty and Chris Davis do a very good job of being able to hit for power, but what are you going to be able to get out of guys like Mark Canha and Chad Pinder? Right now, Pinder has been struggling for this team. Profar has been just absolutely awful for this team. And then you've got a center fielder that is such a good defender in Ramon Laureano, but he just doesn't do anything with the bat either. So I think that it's going to be a good day for David Price, and I think that the Boston Red Sox should be able to win this game comfortably. So I am on the under at even money, and I wound up taking the Boston Red Sox run line at a plus price. We move on to 923, 924 on the betting rotation. You've got the LA Angels going to Seattle to face off against the Mariners. Felix Hernandez is going to take the hill for the Seattle Mariners. Meanwhile, you've got Chris Stratton taking the bump for the Angels. Currently, it is the Mariners that are between even money at minus 104, and the Angels are a slight favorite between minus 106 and minus 110, depending on where you look. And the total on this one is currently at 8.5, shaded to the over slightly at between minus 115 and minus 120. If you like the under, you're going to be getting either minus 105 or even money. This is a game in which I wound up locking in the Mariners run line in this spot because they started out as a favorite. They went to an underdog. I think that the Mariners should be able to win this game comfortably because I have zero faith in Chris Stratton whatsoever. When he was pitching with the San Francisco Giants last year, a very hitter-friendly ballpark, he had an ERA north of 5. This is a guy that just pitches way too much contact. He doesn't do a good job of being able to limit his walks. And with the Seattle Mariners, this is a team that is lighting the world on fire. Tim Beckham has been absolutely sensational for this team. He's already hit 4 home runs. Domingo Santana has 3 home runs and 10 RBI as the Seattle Mariners enter this game 5-1. They have been absolutely great to start out the year. Ryan Healy was able to hit 25 home runs last year. He's been providing some good power for this team. Mitch Haniger towards the top of the lineup is doing a great job. Jay Bruce seems to be coming around as well. Daniel Vogelbach is a guy that can either be a pinch hitter or DH. He provides a little bit of something there. D. Gordon is doing a better job of getting on base as well. And then you take a look at the LA Angels. You've obviously got Mike Trout. He is the most special player out there in baseball, but who's going to be able to help out Mike Trout? Because the Angels, aside from that big outburst that they had in that one inning against the Oakland A's, in which the A's just completely blew it, they've been getting no offense going whatsoever. Tommy LaSalle hasn't been good for this team. Zach Cozart has not been getting out of his own way. At the catcher spot, you're right now getting absolutely ejectedly squat out of Kevon Smith. Albert Pujols is off to a very bad start to the year as well. Cole Calhoun at the top of the lineup has actually been providing a little bit of something as well, but Justin Bour, he's batting .071 right now. He's just not a guy that's hitting for any contact, and I think that that's going to lead to the Seattle Mariners being able to get a convincing win in this one. This is one where I'm going to try to see if the juice on the over of 8.5 gets more around minus 110. I'm hoping for that. If not, I'm going to take the minus 115 juice. But with that said, I am all about the Seattle Mariners run line here. I think that they're going to be able to win this game and win this game convincingly. If it flips and you're not able to get the run line, just take the Seattle Mariners on the money line. I think they should be able to win this game easily. And then the last game on the betting board is currently not on the betting board, as it is 9:25, 9:26. The Colorado Rockies go on the road to face off against the Tampa Bay Rays. Chad Bettis is going to be going for the Colorado Rockies, and the Tampa Bay Rays are going to be going with an opener. If you see a total of 8 or greater, I would take it under. If you're seeing a 7.5 or less, I would take this total over. Chad Bettis is a guy that's a decent pitcher for the Rockies. He's a guy that had an ERA right in the mid-4s last year. He was doing a good job. And with the Rockies, their offense has been a little bit hot and cold, but I really do like the bats that they're able to trot out there. You've got guys like Nolan Arenado and company that are able to do a good job of mashing. But with that said, I really can't advise a play as of right now just because you have no numbers. We have absolutely no idea who the Tampa Bay Rays are going to be trotting out there, so I can only speculate at this point. I do like what the Rays have been providing with G-Man Choi and company. They did a very good job of being able to do a great job with their bullpen and being able to hold down the fort against the Houston Astros, one of the better lineups out there in the big leagues. But until I know who that starter is, I can't give you a side as to whether I'd be siding with the Rockies or the Rays at this point, so that'll be something that'll be posted up on my Twitter page in the morning when a line is available at gunit_81. And that will do it for a Monday edition of MLB Overtime Betting. A big thanks to Gill Alexander of the Vegas Stats and Information Network for joining me in the second segment. And if you like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, we're still getting verified on Apple iTunes, but once we are, you're going to be able to subscribe there, along with Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And if you ever have a Twitter question for the podcast, feel free to tweet it in at gunit_81. I'm always happy to answer those, and I always love talking at you guys, and we'll do so once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.